Yes, I do.
Yeah,
If council would consider this for replacement for the item D that was pulled, we would like to add a quick discussion for holding a public hearing and bringing that item forward on the next council meeting of June 9th to hold the public hearing on the 22nd, and it's for abatement of nuisance vegetation.
It's June 8th.
Did I say the 9th?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, so we'll replace item D with the public hearing to remove nuisance vegetation. And that way, because that's your last topic, right, and you can head out?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, up first, we have a presentation from King County Flood Control District Levy State. Come on down. Open that up. Yeah.
Light scary?
Okay, good. Well, first off, thank you for inviting us tonight. My name is Jean Hill. I'm a supervising engineer in the River and Floodplain Management section, and the work that we do in our section is a service provider for the King County Flood Control District. So I'm going to give you an update tonight about two very important projects, capital projects here in the Lower White River. And with me tonight is Chris Brummer. I'm going to introduce Chris. Chris is our senior engineer. He's our lead designer on these projects, so he's going to be helping me. Okay, so next slide. So just a little bit of background here. You all know this, but of course the White River Basin gets its origin from Mount Rainier, comes down to Mud Mountain Dam, a significant flood control dam, single purpose, only for flood control. And then proceeds on down through the White River Valley, past Buckley, and comes down into the lower reaches here in Auburn and Algona, Pacific, and Sumner. And when it arrives down in your neighborhood, it has this tendency to kind of flatten out into what's called an alluvial fan. And that picture off to the left actually it shows elevations, so the very gray area. And Chris, maybe you can use the cursor to show this. The gray area there along the White River proceeds into a red area, and it's flattening out. You can see how it fans out. And in the green, right where the words alluvial fan are, is the area where Pacific and Auburn is located. Do you have a cursor there?
No.
Okay. Oh, okay. Back up one slide, please. So the area of importance and what I'm going to be talking about tonight are these two capital projects. The one there to the bottom is county line levee setback. That's on the left-hand looking downstream side of the river. And the other project, big capital project, is called the right bank levee setback project. So back in the days when this river looked a little bit differently, this is just an aerial photograph from 1936. And again, you can see the area here in Pacific and the White River. The river moves around a lot. There's certainly a lot of gravel that comes down off of Mount Rainier. And in those days, they used drag lines, and they would dredge out the river, and there was a lot of channelization and revetment building and levee building. So that's kind of the older traditional way of flood control. Go ahead, Chris. And gravel was part of our flood problems. In 1985, there on the left side of this graphic, you can see we had a channel capacity of about 16,000 cubic feet per second. But in 2011, you can see we've only got about 7,500 CFS, cubic feet per second, of capacity for floodwaters. And each year, we've been monitoring this. We survey the channel cross-section, and it's filling in. And so we're losing capacity, and that was certainly evident of what happened in January of 2009. And if we don't do anything, and we look at what the existing conditions are for 15,000 cubic feet per second, that's a 100-year flood event, or what we call 1% annual chance flood. we could have water all over this valley, and that's what this graphic shows. This is output from some of our computer modeling that we do in floodplain analyses. You can see that the water would spread out just about everywhere. So that's our current flood risk that we're dealing with. And of course, a lot of you went through that flood events in January 2009. There was significant flooding through White River Estates, over 100 homes affected, the Pacific Park area, 4th Avenue, 8th Street or Stewart Road was also overtopped, and there were some evacuations and rescues there along Butte Avenue and Stewart Avenue. Other roads were flooded, 3rd Avenue at the park, all the way along Butte Avenue, that's actually looking south toward Pierce County, and again, all of White River Drive. So these are the types of flood damages that our flood control projects are seeking to address. And so to talk about the County Line project, and what's important about the County Line project is that it's going to have the result of lowering flood elevations. Again, the way to look at this graphic, those areas in blue, all those residents there in the city of Pacific, the park area, those are shades of where the County Line project, once built, will actually reduce flooding. So the very darkest blue will drop flood elevations by nearly 4 feet. And that's areas there right along south of the park, down by 4th Avenue, and of course even farther over to the west along Butte. You see lots of good flood reduction benefits. And part of that is protecting over 200 residential homes. Current assessed values of those homes are $52 million, and we made an assumption about contents, and that's another $13 million in damages avoided by the implementation of the County Line project. But as I mentioned, the sediment still comes, and we have to plan for that. We have planned for that in our project. Next slide, please. And so when we think about the future, both with the County Line project in place and some future project on the right bank, we're going to realize that 15 years after these projects are built, because of that sediment aggregation that we need to account for, that there'll be over 700 residential homes protected, even 25 commercial properties, and of course a future assessed value and a future value in terms of content, in terms of the types of benefits that these flood control projects will provide for the area. So another element about the County Line project that I want to emphasize here is just it has a significant flood protection, but it also does a lot of good things for habitat. As I showed in that 1936 photograph, there's a lot of dredging going on, channelization, and as a result, the wetland area and floodplain areas were disconnected from the main channel of the river. By setting the levees back, we actually regained rearing habitat for spring chinook and steelhead, and in particular, spring chinook is a very important listed species for recovery in the Puget Sound area, and so the White River spring chinook is quite unique and important. Because of these environmental benefits, we also have gotten a lot of good support from funding partners, and I'll talk a little bit about that a few slides down here. And another important thing, again, is the sediment deposition. Opening up the river and giving the sediment someplace else to go rather than just deposit right in a constricted channel is a way to manage sediment and provide storage for it. So I'm going to go through a few components here about what the County Line project is about. Shown there in yellow is the alignment for nearly 6,000 lineal feet of setback levee. We will also be adding 5,000 lineal feet of what we call bio-revetment in along the front edge of that levee. That's for erosion protection, so the channel doesn't migrate into the levee. We also have engineered log jams, that's ELJs. We have 4 of those that are sort of incorporated into the bank with the bio-revetment to help deflect erosive flows. And then we have 4 others, we call them apex ELJs. Those are the black dots you'll see at the upper end there in the green shaded area. And those help to split flows, slow down velocities. It also is a way to help drop out sediment that will locate behind those engineered log jams. Then we have to go in and actually remove the existing levee. So the existing levee area is shown there along in blue, and that's about 45,000 lineal feet of levee removal, and I think about 30,000 cubic yards of material that will be pulling out of that area. And that's just another aspect of taking out that artificial fill that's near the river channel and pulling it out of the way. So again, it opens up, provides room for more sediment to drop out, and actually lowers the flood elevation. And last but not least, at the upper end, shown in yellow, near the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway embankment, we'll do about 850 feet of levee resurfacing. Again, this resurfacing is to ensure that that part of the existing levee stays in place, so we don't have an uncontrolled overtopping of that levee that would go in along the Burlington Northern Railway. And it's also to have good flow transition out from underneath the bridges down to where the river will open up into the wetland area. So a couple of milestones to talk about. This illustration shows a cross-section of what the levee setback will be there on the right. There will be a revegetated riparian buffer, all with native plantings, shrubs, and trees. And as I mentioned, the biorevetment that provides that erosion protection there, it's nestled in along the wetland. We do have all our permit approvals in hand. Just last Friday, we accomplished our last acquisition for land rights, so all land rights are in hand, and we're now preparing the final plans and construction specifications during the summer and fall. So we're ready to go to construction next spring. It is a 2-year construction project. There's a lot of work to do here. We'll be constructing that setback levee first, and then we'll be going back in and pulling out the existing levee. So as I mentioned, we had some pretty good funding partners going on here. First, of course, the King County Flood Control District, providing nearly $12 million toward the project. The Natural Resources Damage Assessment, or NRDA party, is our most significant funding partner, nearly $5 million. Again, because of the environmental elements of this project, they felt it was appropriate to support us. We were also able to leverage from the state Salmon Recovery Funding Board grant for nearly $800,000, again because of the significance of spring chinook in the White River. And also Pierce County is a funding partner for $500,000. So we're looking at an estimated project cost of completion of just over $18 million for this particular project. A few other things to note about the NRDA parties and how they've supported us. As you'll hear later a little bit more about our partnership with Burlington Northern, there are a lot of parties that came together that, through a lot of negotiations, as my slide shows, over 60 parties, they're all signing on to this settlement agreement that is between the parties and, of course, the trustees. And the trustees include, their listing at the bottom, NOAA Fisheries, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Department of Interior, both the Puyallup and Muckleshoot Indian tribes, as well as State Department of Ecology. So a lot of people coming together to pull together to support this project. Also with King County and the King County Flood Control District, we will be signing a funding agreement with the NRDA parties. We started these discussions in 2008, so it's been 7 years of talking to a lot of folks and pulling it all together to get to this point in time, and so we'll be ready to sign that funding agreement here in June. Again, as I mentioned, there are specific environmental requirements that the NRDA parties were after, as well as the trustees that are embedded in this project. And so there are some legal limits with the future use of all the properties within the County Line Project area. Next slide. Just a few things to say about Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway. The adjacency and the needs of Burlington Northern and the needs of the county have come together in some bilateral agreements that we've been talking about for the last couple of years. We worked together to actually acquire the Gibson parcel and property. We just completed that here just last month. And we're also coordinating our construction approach. The levee tie-ins need to connect into the Burlington Northern Railway embankment, and Burlington Northern will also be placing some fill along their embankment. So we'll have engineers talking to engineers to coordinate those activities. So a few more slides. I want to talk about the right bank project. Again, this is in a very conceptual stage. The aerial photograph there on the right is the rendition about where the HESCOs are basically at, shown there in red. Again, just referring back to some historic photographs, you can see how the river has moved around in here. And certainly you can see the image of where the river needs to flow and flood and has flooded. One of the temporary steps we took for flood protection, as you know, are the HESCO barriers. These are the big green baskets filled with sand. They used to be one row high, and then we doubled them up. So they'll be in place as the temporary flood protection until we can get the right bank project more defined and constructed. So we're in the feasibility stage. We're just basically in data collection. We're going to do some geotechnical investigations similar to what we did on the county line project. We need to understand the types of soils that we would be building upon. We have to look at the variety of different types of alignments that would be best suited to meet all the needs in the area. There's flood protection, there's recreation, park usage, access to the river and floodplain, and all of these types of pieces of information and uses have to come together to examine various alignments. Some of the areas that we want to look at, of course, is down through White River Estates. We've bought several homes there that along the river channel, but we need to determine how to bring the lower end of the levee and wrap it around White River Estates and Government Canal. As you know, Government Canal can backwater with the river, and we want to make sure that this project, in its permanent form, doesn't have an end run of floodwaters coming back into White River Estates from above. So that's where we need to look at that alignment. Certainly 3rd Avenue and the park and the upper end, we need to take a close look at that and understand what is the most benefit for all parties involved. And groundwater conditions, we've heard a lot about the rising of groundwater in this area. It's another important factor when designing the levee. And as I mentioned, the Government Canal and Butte Avenue levee tie-in we'll be looking at. Next slide. While we're doing that, we're going to still be monitoring the channel. This is looking at the 3rd Avenue, 3rd place. Behind there with the homes. You can see the gravel is accumulating. This is before the HESCOs were built, so we want to keep a close eye on it. While the county line project goes in, we still need to be monitoring the channel. So we have a lot of work to do on the right bank. We haven't made as much progress on it in terms of I was hoping we'd be farther along in some feasibility studies than we are today, so really we're just getting started. And we're going to be using some consultants to help us with some of those investigations. We would need to initiate a very strong city and public involvement process as we want to incorporate all input about developing even ideas for different alternatives for this project. We have continued with acquisitions where opportunities arise. If there are willing sellers and we feel that it's a key piece to a future project, we will go ahead and work with landowners under that situation. We look at the next 2 years to actually go through development of alternatives, work with the stakeholder group and the city to develop a preferred alignment. From there will be preliminary engineering to do design work and conceptual level, look at permitting. Once again, we'll be talking with our folks at Burlington Northern about how we can tie in at the north end. That'll be another critical piece to contain floodwaters. And again, continuing with acquisitions. This is another big project. It will probably take a 2-year construction period, probably 2018 to 2019. And right now, our rough estimate of what the project would cost is somewhere between $25 and $30 million. Okay, that might be the last slide. So I rambled off a lot of information there. If anybody has any particular questions, I'd be happy to answer or explain anything that I've presented.
Questions of council?
A couple of questions.
I realize you're not FEMA, so you can't speak for them, but what are you anticipating the impact of all this will be on their flood mapping as far as insurance rates for long-term Pacific?
It's a very good question. I wish I could answer it thoroughly, but I'll give you a good shot at it. We work with FEMA a lot. We've done a lot of flood studies in the county, and I've worked on a lot of those. And FEMA has a new policy out. It's called Levy Analysis and Mapping Procedures. And that particular policy is specific to those types of levies that don't meet full certification requirements. And one of the tricks of full certification is, can you tie into another certifiable flood protection facility? So very continuous level of protection. So if you can't do that, FEMA said, well, wait a minute, these levies are pretty stout. You should be able to get some credit in flood mapping. And so they came up with this new policy. They haven't quite figured out how to apply it in all cases, so they selected a set of pilot studies throughout the nation, I think 18 or more different sites, to figure out how to apply it and technically work with the information to come up with what would be then a flood map actually showing and accounting for some of the protection of these newer, stouter levees. Our plan with our projects is to be able to provide all our technical information, and we've done some very complicated and complex modeling, and we'll provide all that to FEMA and to the cities, both Pacific, Sumner, Pierce County, and there will need to be a process to work through with FEMA to get that flood map, the insurance map, completed. We've asked many times to FEMA Region 10, how long is it going to take to get a new map? And they have been pretty vague, 5 years, 10 years. So I think you have a FEMA map now, that is the insurance map, and I just don't see much movement with FEMA to get a new map prepared unless there's strong community support from the cities and the counties to voice the need.
Other questions from council? Councilman Bowden?
On the west bank, I know you obviously haven't done all of your inspections and everything yet, but still in the planning stages. Curious if you've had any inspections, reported past hazardous waste dumping along where the park is now. Have you had a chance to look into that?
Yeah, it's one of the things we're interested in finding out more about. We do have some information that underneath the park area was a dump site of some type. We know that it was the Seattle King County Public Health looked into it in 1985. We have a report on it where they did some basic testing and closed the site, so to speak. One of the things that we want to do, first order of business, is to look into what the soil materials are and what is there, so we understand what that means and is an appropriate soil to build a levee on or not. And so that's some of the early feasibility work that we'll be doing. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's one of the first bits of work that we will be doing. We'll be talking with the city about the need for us to mobilize some equipment to go out there and take some soil samples and borings. We did similar work on the county line project, and so we'll need to work closely with you so that we can maybe do that on times when the park isn't going to be used, or to make sure we're not in your way, that sort of thing, once we have a better plan as to how we'll approach it.
Other questions? Josh, anyone? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And now we have a presentation from Burlington Northern Santa Fe on the project.
Another section.
Another what?
Is there another section?
It is.